After a week's holiday, we flew north to Auckland to visit with family members before traveling home, learning only then that the American president had suspended entry into the U.S. by any foreign nationals who had traveled to China during the previous 14 days. By this date, 213 people had died, and over 9,800 had been infected worldwide. But in New Zealand, the weather was still stunning, the scourge a distant malady, even as both the U.S. and New Zealand closed their ports to air travelers from China. As I entered the gate for my plane to San Francisco, Air New Zealand representatives checked my passport and asked if I had traveled to China during the previous 2 weeks. No one took my temperature, and other than swathing my hands in sanitizer, I buckled myself into my seat in anticipation of the 14-hour plane ride to San Francisco, my only worry being whether or not I had enough time to watch the entire first season of HBO's series Succession, the dramatization of the dynastic greed that seems to have gripped my homeland. I landed in the United States on February 18th. My husband had arrived a few days before to go back to work in Trenton. The airports were packed with travelers, and no one was wearing face masks or protective gear. It took a while for me to find my suitcase before calling an Uber to drive me home. During my holiday, I hadn't even thought about the relative safety of New Zealand, but within a few weeks of arrival home in New Jersey, the New Zealand Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, would shut down the country, prohibiting most international travel and domestic transportation as well. She commanded the population of 5 million to remain within their intimate bubbles, and because her leadership was firm but also compassionate, the country obeyed her singular lead. After 6 weeks of careful scrutiny, the coronavirus appeared to have been completely eradicated in Aotearoa, the land of the long white cloud.